I never imagined that after a lifetime of giving, the people I loved most could betray me so completely. My name is Margaret, and I live in a quiet suburb of Bristol. My husband, David, had been the kind of man who believed in fairness, honesty, and loyalty. Together, we built a life from nothing, a modest home, a small garden, and a son, Ethan, who we raised with love, patience, and values we believed would guide him forever. For years, our home was filled with laughter. I remember the sound of Ethan running down the hallway with sticky fingers from jam toast, shouting, "Mom, catch me if you can." Those moments, simple as they were, became the foundation of my pride and joy. After David passed, the silence of the house was deafening, but I held on to those memories, thinking having Ethan near would comfort me. He promised, "Mom, I'll always take care of you." I believed him. At first, he did. Ethan visited often, helped me with chores, asked for advice, and shared his business ventures with excitement. We spent afternoons together in the garden David had lovingly tended for decades, sipping tea and laughing over old family stories. But slowly, things began to change. He met Sophie, a woman who brought glamour and confidence into his life, but also a sharp edge I had never seen. Suddenly, I wasn't Mum anymore. I was someone in the way of their perfect little world. Sophie's remarks, once polite, began to carry subtle derision. "Your living room is quaint," she said one evening, her tone forced, almost testing me. Ethan chuckled nervously, glancing at me as if to say, "Don't take it personally." But I could feel the sting. That night, I went into David's study, drawn instinctively to the drawer where he had kept all the house papers. Something told me to make sure everything was secure. I had no idea that this small act of foresight would later save me from the greatest betrayal of my life. The next few months passed in an uneasy rhythm. Ethan became distant, often distracted by work or social events. Sophie's influence became more obvious. Ethan's laughter in the living room, once a sound I cherished, became strained and rare. My intuition told me something was wrong. Then, subtle signs began to appear. Bank statements, letters, and unusual notices addressed to Ethan, but delivered to our home. I asked him gently, "Are you having trouble with anything?" He waved it off. "Mom, it's nothing. Don't worry about me." But I couldn't ignore the signs. One Tuesday morning, a man in a high-vis jacket knocked at the door. "I'm here to take measurements for the property valuation," he said. My heart sank. Valuation? Why was anyone assessing our home without informing me? When Ethan came home that evening, I confronted him. "Why is someone valuing the house?" He smiled, that confident, effortless smile he always used when he wanted to appear calm. "It's just refinancing paperwork, Mom. Nothing to worry about." But I knew it wasn't nothing. My instinct screamed that something had changed, that my son was no longer the boy I had raised. Days later, I received the first formal letter confirming the sale. The house, the one we had built from scratch, had been sold. Ethan explained it casually, saying it was a smart financial decision. I stayed calm, though my heart raced with a mix of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. How could my only child, the boy I had nurtured and loved unconditionally, betray me so completely? I wasn't powerless. Months earlier, I had quietly arranged a legal trust in David's name, ensuring that the property could never truly be transferred without proper authorization. The house, technically, was no longer Ethan's to sell. When I called my lawyer to confirm, he reassured me, "Margaret, the sale is legally invalid. You still have full control." Even knowing this, the humiliation was almost unbearable. Neighbors whispered behind closed doors, strangers asked questions, and Ethan confronted me with anger, believing he had outsmarted me. "You tricked me," he yelled. "I worked hard for that money." I shook my head and spoke calmly. "No, Ethan. You sold something that wasn't yours. That is all." The following weeks were tense. Sophie avoided me entirely, Ethan refused to speak to me, and I quietly moved into a small apartment, taking only what I needed. In those quiet moments, I began to understand an important truth. Betrayal is not only painful, it teaches. Trust must be earned, even with those closest to you. Love without boundaries can make you vulnerable, and standing firm, even in silence, can be the strongest form of justice. I spent long afternoons reflecting in David's garden, sipping tea, thinking about how I had been so careful with the trust, the papers, the legal arrangements. Everything I had done to protect myself and my home had prepared me for this moment. Ethan thought he had defeated me, but in reality, the opposite was true. I also learned another lesson. Strength doesn't always look dramatic. Strength can be quiet, calm, and deliberate. It doesn't demand recognition, but it commands respect. I realized that I had the power all along, the foresight to protect what mattered most, and the patience to let events unfold naturally. Life moved on, slowly. Ethan's arrogance faded as he realized that he couldn't take something that was never his. Sophie became distant, perhaps recognizing that her influence over him was limited. I, meanwhile, learned to navigate a new reality, living alone, quietly but firmly, with the knowledge that I had done what was right, even if others didn't understand it. I often think back to that first day I realized my son had sold the house. My heart had ached, yes, but my mind had been sharp. I had been tested, and I had passed. I had survived betrayal, humiliation, and the temptation to anger. And in that quiet survival, I found a kind of victory that no one could take from me. Even now, I live modestly in my small apartment, surrounded by memories of the past, but protected by the foresight that once felt unnecessary. Ethan eventually came to me, humbled, seeking forgiveness. I listened, but I never forgot. Betrayal leaves a scar, a reminder that even those we love most can hurt us deeply. But it also leaves a lesson. Trust carefully, act wisely, and protect what is truly yours. And so, I continue each day with quiet strength, a sense of calm that comes from knowing that I am capable of enduring even the deepest betrayal, and that true power often comes not from confrontation, but from foresight, patience, and resilience. The months after the sold sign appeared in front of my house were the hardest I had ever faced. On the surface, everything seemed normal. Ethan visited occasionally, smiled politely, and pretended to maintain the same relationship we had always shared. But beneath the surface, a subtle shift had begun, one I could feel in my bones. He was no longer the boy who had run through the hallways calling for me. He had changed, and Sophie's influence over him was growing stronger by the day. It started with small things. I noticed Ethan checking his phone constantly, speaking in hushed tones when he thought I wasn't listening. He would cancel visits at the last minute, offering excuses that sounded rehearsed, almost mechanical. When he did come over, the warmth that had once defined our conversations had vanished, replaced by polite smiles and half-hearted nods. Sophie, of course, was always at his side, her eyes sharp and calculating, as though she were silently measuring my worth. One evening, I overheard a conversation that chilled me to the bone. I had gone into the kitchen to pour some tea, and they were in the living room, speaking in low voices. "Mom's becoming too cautious," Sophie whispered. "She might interfere with our plans. We need to handle this carefully." Ethan's laugh was quiet, uneasy, but I could hear it. Handle what carefully? Plans for what? The question swirled in my mind, and an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. I realized that my instincts had been right all along. Something was happening behind my back. I had always trusted Ethan, always believed that our bond was unbreakable. But now I understood that trust could be manipulated, even by those closest to us. My mind drifted back to David, and I remembered the countless times he had warned me. "Margaret, always protect what is yours. Even the people you love most can betray you, if given the chance." That night, I could hardly sleep. I sat in David's armchair, staring out of the window at the quiet street, wondering if I had underestimated the storm that was brewing. The house, my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a fragile shell. I knew I had to act carefully. One rash move could give them the advantage, and I wasn't willing to let that happen. The next morning, I decided to visit Mr. Hughes, our family solicitor. I explained my concerns, my voice calm but resolute. "I need to ensure that the property is completely protected. I don't trust the intentions behind Ethan's actions anymore." He nodded thoughtfully, reviewing the documents I had signed months earlier. "You've already done everything necessary," he said. "The trust is solid. Legally, no one can sell or mortgage the property without your approval. You're protected, Margaret. You just need to wait for the moment to act." His words offered some comfort, but they did little to ease the tension that had settled over my life. Every day, I watched Ethan interact with neighbors, friends, and strangers, pretending everything was normal. Yet I could feel the undercurrent of greed, the subtle manipulation, the quiet arrogance that had grown in him over the past months. It was a dangerous combination, one that could have destroyed everything if I had not been vigilant. As weeks turned into months, the subtle changes became more pronounced. Ethan started to distance himself even further, avoiding eye contact, minimizing conversations, and spending more time at work or with Sophie. He had begun to adopt her mannerisms, her calculated speech, her sharp gaze. He was no longer the boy I had raised with love and care. He was becoming a stranger in my own home. During this time, I also began noticing discrepancies in our financial documents. Letters from the bank, unusual statements, and notifications of payments I hadn't authorized began to arrive. Ethan always had an explanation, always a charming smile or a polite excuse. "Mom, don't worry. It's just business," he would say, as if repetition could make the deception true. But I knew better. Experience and intuition had taught me to read between the lines, to notice the things that were never spoken aloud. One afternoon, while I was sorting through a stack of letters, I found something that made my heart pound. A letter from a property agency, addressed to Ethan, confirming an upcoming auction of the house. My hands trembled as I read it, the words blurring as panic threatened to take hold. This was no longer subtle. The betrayal was real, imminent, and devastating. I called Mr. Hughes immediately. "Something is happening," I said. "They're moving forward with the sale. I can feel it. I don't know what to do." He reassured me, reminding me of the legal protections in place. "The house cannot be sold, Margaret. The trust ensures that. But you must remain calm. They cannot force the transaction. Let them reveal themselves. The law will protect you." In the days that followed, I became more vigilant. I observed every move Ethan made, every word he spoke, every glance he exchanged with Sophie. I began documenting interactions, writing down details in a notebook, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. There was a quiet strength building within me, a resolve that had been tempered by years of love, loss, and endurance. One evening, Ethan came home with a stack of papers, his smile forced and tight. "Mom," he said, trying to sound casual, "I've taken care of some things regarding the house. Don't worry about it." I studied him carefully, noticing the hesitation in his voice, the flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He thought he was in control, but I knew better. I let him speak, nodding quietly, my expression neutral. "I see," I said. "Thank you for letting me know." Inside, I was calculating, planning, and waiting. Every word he spoke, every movement he made, confirmed the pattern I had sensed for months: greed, impatience, and arrogance. But it was all surface level. Beneath it, he was unprepared for what was coming. As the evening wore on, I walked into the garden, the place where David and I had shared so many moments of peace. I sat on the bench, letting the cool air wash over me, thinking about the months that had passed. I realized that patience was my greatest ally. I had anticipated this moment, and I had prepared. Ethan and Sophie thought they could act without consequence, but they were about to learn a lesson in humility and perhaps even justice. The next few weeks were a delicate dance. I maintained appearances, spoke politely to Ethan, and pretended ignorance of his plans. Meanwhile, I confirmed every detail with Mr. Hughes, ensuring that the legal protections were airtight. Every visit, every interaction, was a test of their patience, a subtle push toward revealing the truth. And finally, the moment came when the betrayal could no longer be hidden. It started with a casual conversation with a neighbor, who mentioned that someone had come to appraise the property. I feigned surprise, expressing concern that the sale might be rushed. Ethan, thinking I was still unaware, tried to reassure me with false calm. But his tone betrayed him, the slight twitch of his hand, the forced smile, small details I had learned to read over years of experience. Then came the letter, the official notice that the house had been listed and sold. My heart clenched, but I remained outwardly calm. I knew the trust would protect me, but I also knew that this was the moment to let them reveal themselves fully. Their arrogance would be their undoing. That night, I sat by the window, reflecting on the months that had brought us to this point. The subtle changes, the whispers, the secret meetings, all had led to this confrontation. I realized that betrayal, though painful, was also illuminating. It showed the true nature of those we trust most. It revealed weaknesses, motivations, and intentions that might otherwise remain hidden. As I prepared for the coming days, I felt a quiet sense of resolve. I would face this betrayal not with anger, but with wisdom. I would allow the truth to unfold, confident in the knowledge that I had protected myself and the home that held a lifetime of memories. And I knew, deep within, that when the moment of reckoning came, justice, subtle, inevitable, and unavoidable, would be mine. The calm of the weeks following the subtle betrayals was deceptive. Ethan, confident in his actions, continued to act as if everything was normal, oblivious to the fact that I had already protected the house through a legal trust. He thought the property was his to sell, and Sophie whispered carefully in his ear, guiding his decisions. But I had learned the truth. Patience and foresight were far more powerful than arrogance and greed. The first major betrayal arrived as a formal notice. The house had been listed, buyers were interested, and Ethan acted as if it was a done deal. Yet beneath the surface, his confidence was cracking. He was unaware that the trust legally prevented any sale. I calmly spoke to Mr. Hughes, reaffirming the protections, and then chose silence. The less he knew, the more unraveling would occur naturally. In the following weeks, I observed every move he made. Conversations with Sophie, phone calls in hushed tones, appointments with unknown individuals, all were carefully documented. I remained outwardly calm, maintaining a neutral demeanor when he visited. I allowed him to believe he was in control while I silently prepared for the moment when his arrogance would meet reality. Then came the confrontation. It was a sunny morning when Ethan arrived, confident as ever. "Mom, we've finalized everything," he said, expecting obedience or at least shock. I looked at him, steady and composed. "I see," I replied calmly, letting him struggle with the sudden uncertainty. "You did what, exactly?" His face faltered, and I knew the law was about to reveal its power. I calmly explained that the sale was legally impossible. Every document he had signed, every action he thought secured, was invalid. His smug confidence crumbled into confusion and panic. Sophie's face went pale. She had miscalculated, assuming my age and quiet nature meant weakness. But strength does not announce itself. It reveals itself in moments like these. The weeks that followed were a mixture of tension, negotiations, and moral lessons. Neighbors and friends, who had quietly observed the situation, began to whisper. Ethan tried to salvage his pride, but I stayed firm. Legal experts, trustees, and even distant relatives became witnesses to a simple truth. Deception, no matter how clever, cannot overcome foresight and preparation. Emotionally, the strain was tremendous. Yet amidst it, I discovered an unexpected strength within myself. The betrayal had forced me to confront not just Ethan's mistakes, but my own vulnerabilities. I had allowed myself to be blindsided by trust, yet I had also built safeguards that now became my armor. Patience, strategy, and quiet resilience turned what could have been devastation into a profound lesson in self-preservation and moral authority. As Ethan gradually recognized his errors, humility replaced his arrogance. He apologized sincerely, though I did not instantly forgive. Forgiveness, I realized, is earned through reflection and genuine change, not merely words. Sophie's influence waned, and even she could not maintain the illusion of control over events. I eventually regained full command over my life and property. The house remained mine, protected and respected. More importantly, the relationships had shifted. Boundaries were redrawn, and respect, once absent, began to emerge. I welcomed Ethan cautiously, offering guidance and compassion, but ensuring that the mistakes of the past could never repeat. In the end, I realized the most powerful lessons of all. Vigilance, foresight, and patience can shield you from betrayal. Love and trust must be paired with discernment, and strength is often quiet, deliberate, and unseen until the moment it is needed most. Though the ordeal with my son tested me in ways I could not have imagined, it also revealed my resilience. I had survived not by confrontation, but through foresight, patience, and moral clarity. And in that quiet survival, I found not only justice, but peace, a lesson that the world can try to shake you, but it cannot break you if you remain wise, careful, and steadfast. Now I live quietly, peacefully, and with purpose. The house, the memories, and the lessons are all mine. Ethan, having learned humility and responsibility, has begun rebuilding his life with respect and integrity. And I, Margaret, have discovered that even after betrayal, a life of calm strength, careful planning, and unshakable resolve can prevail over the greed and arrogance of others. The story, though painful, is also a testament. The people we love most can fail us, but our wisdom, patience, and careful preparation can ensure that we not only survive, but thrive, stronger than ever.